They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But in Silicon Valley, it's served with a side of source code and a garnish of poetic justice. I still remember the exact moment I realized my best friend had betrayed me. It wasn't when I saw the TechCrunch article announcing his successful series a funding round. It wasn't when I noticed my missed calls from mutual friends trying to warn me. It was when I opened my laptop that morning and saw the notification from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, application status update, rejected, prior art found. The prior art they referenced. A nearly identical patent application filed exactly 37 days before mine. The applicant? Bright Future Technologies LLC, a Delaware corporation with one sole owner, Brian Matthews. My best friend since 4th grade. The person who'd spent countless nights on my couch brainstorming this very idea with me. The friend who'd promised we'd change the world together. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how I lost everything, and then got it all back and more, you need to know how it all began. 15 years earlier, I was just Adam Chen, the awkward Chinese-American kid who'd moved to suburban Pennsylvania mid-school year. Brian was the first person who spoke to me at lunch, sliding his chocolate milk across the table with a grin. Want a trade? Your mom always packs the best stuff. That simple act of kindness sparked a friendship that would shape the next decade and a half of our lives. We were inseparable through middle school and high school. When my parents divorced in 9th grade, I lived at Brian's house for 2 weeks. When his dad lost his job during the recession, I split my paper route money with him so he could keep buying lunch at school. We were more than friends, we were brothers. After high school, we both got into Penn State. I studied computer science while Brian pursued business administration. Even then, we talked about starting a company together someday. You'll build it, I'll sell it, he'd say, and I'd nod, believing in that dream with all my heart. The idea came to me during our senior year. I'd been working on machine learning algorithms for my thesis, specifically focusing on pattern recognition in human behavior. One night, after a particularly frustrating group project meeting where half the team didn't show up, it hit me: what if we could create an app that could predict human reliability? The concept was simple but revolutionary. By analyzing patterns in someone's digital footprint, their calendar usage, response times, location data, and social media activity, we could create a reliability score that would help people make better decisions about who to trust with tasks, projects, and commitments. I called it Trust Score. The irony of that name still makes me laugh bitterly. I shared everything with Brian: the algorithms, the potential markets, the implementation challenges. We stayed up for 3 days straight in my apartment, mapping out the business plan on my living room walls with sticky notes. Brian's eyes lit up when I showed him the preliminary market research. This could be huge, Adam. Like, change the world huge. We're finally doing it, I said, high-fiving him at 4 a.m. as we finished the pitch deck. The Chen Matthews Dream Team is going live. About that, Brian said, looking uncomfortable. Maybe we should keep this between us for now. Don't tell anyone else about it until we've got everything locked down. I agreed, trusting him completely. That was my first mistake. The next few weeks were a blur of coding and planning. I worked on the prototype while Brian said he was reaching out to his network for potential investors. He became increasingly hard to reach, always in meetings or networking. I didn't think much of it, I was too focused on perfecting the algorithm. Then came that morning with the patent rejection notice. As I sat there staring at my screen, the pieces started falling into place. The missed calls. The cancelled meetings. The way Brian had insisted on keeping everything quiet. While I'd been pouring my heart into the technology, he'd been secretly meeting with investors, positioning himself as the sole founder and visionary behind TrustScore. I called him immediately. It went to voicemail. I texted, "We need to talk. Now." His response came hours later: "I'm sorry, Adam. Business is business. I'll make it up to you, I can offer you a great position in the company. Senior developer, generous equity package. Think about it. I thought about it all right. I thought about every sleepless night I'd spent perfecting that algorithm. I thought about every time I'd shared my fears and dreams with Brian. I thought about his mom's chocolate chip cookies and his dad's career advice and all the Christmas mornings I'd spent at their house. Then I thought about how none of that had mattered when he saw the opportunity to steal my life's work. That's when I decided, I wasn't going to get mad. I was going to get even. The next 6 months were the hardest of my life. I watched from the sidelines as TrustScore launched to massive acclaim. Brian was featured in Forbes 30 Under 30. The app was downloaded millions of times. Every notification felt like a knife in my back. But I wasn't idle. I was building something too, my revenge. First, I reached out to my network in the cybersecurity community. Not the black hat hackers who could break into the system, that would be too obvious and potentially illegal. Instead, I connected with ethical hackers who could help me understand every vulnerability in my own code that Brian was now using. I also hired a private investigator to look into Brian's business dealings. It wasn't cheap, I had to sell my car and move into a tiny studio apartment to afford it. But it was worth every penny. The PI discovered that Brian hadn't just stolen my idea, he'd been cutting corners everywhere. He'd outsourced development to an unvetted team in Eastern Europe, potentially exposing user data. He'd misrepresented user numbers to investors. And most importantly, he'd failed to properly secure the intellectual property rights from the overseas developers. That's when I launched phase 1 of my plan. I created a detailed dossier of all the security vulnerabilities in TrustScore's current implementation and sent it to their biggest enterprise clients. Not as a threat, but as a concerned security researcher. I included proof-of-concept demonstrations that showed how their corporate data could be compromised. The effect was immediate. Enterprise clients began pulling out, citing security concerns. TrustScore's rating on the App Store plummeted as privacy-conscious users jumped ship. Brian's perfect startup story began showing cracks. But that was just the beginning. While TrustScore was struggling with security issues, I was building something better. I took my original algorithm and improved it, incorporating everything I'd learned about human nature from Brian's betrayal. The new system didn't just measure reliability, it measured integrity, using sophisticated pattern recognition to identify potential bad actors in any network. I called it KarmaScore. I approached venture capitalists with my pitch, but not the usual Silicon Valley crowd. I went to firms known for their ethical investment strategies. When I showed them how KarmaScore could have prevented situations exactly like what happened between Brian and me, they were intrigued. When I demonstrated how it was superior to TrustScore in every way, they were convinced. The funding came through just as phase 2 of my plan went into action. The PI had found the original developers Brian had used, and they were more than happy to assert their intellectual property rights once they realized how much money TrustScore was making. The resulting legal battle was brutal and public. As TrustScore's legal troubles made headlines, I launched KarmaScore with a marketing campaign that never mentioned my competitor directly but emphasized our core values: integrity, security, and genuine trust. The timing couldn't have been better. Users and enterprise clients who were fleeing TrustScore needed somewhere to go, and we were there with open arms. Brian tried to fight back, of course. He gave interviews claiming I was bitter and trying to destroy him out of jealousy. But every attack just made him look worse, especially when journalists started digging into the full story of TrustScore's origins. The final blow came from an unexpected source. Remember those sticky notes on my apartment walls? I'd taken pictures of them, dozens of them, all showing Brian's handwriting alongside mine, dated weeks before his patent application. When those images were anonymously sent to the patent office and his investors, the game was over. TrustScore's value plummeted. Investors initiated fraud investigations. Brian's dreams crumbled around him just as mine had a year earlier. That's when he showed up at my door. He looked terrible, unshaven, red-eyed, wearing the same Penn State hoodie he'd had since college. "Adam," he said, his voice breaking. "I need your help. Please. You're the only one who understands this technology well enough to fix it." I let him stand there for a long moment, remembering all the times I'd opened this same door to him as a friend. Finally, I spoke. "You know what the funny thing is, Brian? I would have given you half of everything anyway. If you'd just asked. If you'd just been honest. That's what friends do." He started to speak, but I cut him off. "The really funny thing? Karma Score isn't just an app. It's a mirror. It shows us who we really are. And right now, your score. It's exactly what you deserve." I closed the door on his protests and went back to work. Karma Score was growing fast, and we had a new feature to roll out, one that would help people identify and prevent betrayal before it happened. After all, the best revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about making sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else. These days, I'm doing well. Karma Score is valued at over $1 billion, and more importantly, it's actually helping people. We've prevented countless scams, exposed numerous frauds, and even helped law enforcement identify a pattern of corporate espionage. Every now and then, I check on Brian. Last I heard, he was working as a junior sales rep at a software company in Nebraska. His Karma Score is slowly improving, seems like he's learned his lesson. Sometimes people ask me if I regret what I did, if taking revenge made me just as bad as him. I always tell them the same thing: revenge isn't about making yourself feel better. It's about restoring balance to the universe. It's about making sure that actions have consequences. And sometimes, those consequences come with a side of poetic justice and a garnish of karmic retribution. After all, in Silicon Valley, the code of honor is just as important as the code you write. And if you break one, you'd better be prepared for the other to break you. The funny thing is, I recently discovered that TrustScore's algorithm had one fatal flaw that Brian never found: it couldn't recognize the pattern of betrayal in its own creator's behavior. But Karma Score? It would have spotted him from a mile away. I guess some things really do come full circle. And in the end, the best revenge isn't just living well, it's living better than the person who tried to destroy you could have ever imagined. Just ask my Karma Score. It's perfect. But there's more to this story than just revenge. The development of Karma Score taught me things about human nature that I never expected to learn. Each line of code I wrote was informed by the patterns of betrayal I'd experienced, making the algorithm uniquely capable of detecting subtle signs of deception. The technical implementation was fascinating. While TrustScore relied primarily on surface-level data, calendar entries, response times, and social media activity, Karma Score dug deeper. We developed sophisticated natural language processing algorithms that could detect inconsistencies in communication patterns. The system could identify when someone's written communications showed signs of manipulation or deception. For example, we discovered that people planning to betray trust often exhibit subtle changes in their writing style weeks before taking action. They use more distancing language, fewer personal pronouns, and an increased number of qualifier words. Brian's own emails to me during the weeks before his betrayal perfectly matched these patterns, something I only realized after developing the algorithm. The AI also analyzed micropatterns in behavior that most people wouldn't notice. Changes in response times to specific individuals, variations in location check-in patterns, and subtle shifts in social network interactions could all indicate impending betrayal. We called this feature the Trust Entropy Index. But the real breakthrough came when we started incorporating blockchain technology. We developed a system of trust contracts, immutable records of commitments and promises that could be verified and tracked over time. Every interaction contributed to a person's Karma Score, creating a comprehensive picture of their reliability and integrity. The impact on the business world was revolutionary. Companies started using Karma Score for everything from hiring decisions to partnership evaluations. One Fortune 500 company credited our system with preventing a major corporate espionage attempt. A leading investment bank used it to identify and prevent a potential Ponzi scheme before it could launch. The human stories were even more compelling. A woman in Seattle used Karma Score to identify that her business partner was planning to force her out of their startup. A nonprofit organization in Chicago used it to verify the authenticity of potential donors. A group of independent artists used it to create a reliable collaboration network. The success stories poured in, each one validating my belief that trust could be quantified and protected. But with that success came challenges I hadn't anticipated. Privacy advocates raised concerns about the power of our algorithms. Ethics committees debated the implications of assigning numerical values to human trustworthiness. Competitors emerged, claiming their systems were just as effective but less invasive. We addressed these challenges head-on. We made our algorithms transparent and gave users complete control over their data. We established an ethics board composed of leading experts in psychology, technology, and privacy law. We even open-sourced certain components of our system to promote transparency and trust. The irony wasn't lost on me. In creating a system to prevent betrayal, I had to become more trustworthy than ever. Brian's downfall continued to teach me lessons long after our confrontation. Through mutual friends, I heard about his struggles to rebuild his life. He tried to launch another startup, but his reputation preceded him. Investors wouldn't touch him. Former colleagues avoided him. His Karma Score, despite slow improvement, remained a constant reminder of his past actions. One day, about 2 years after our last encounter, I received an email from him. It was long, honest, and raw. He detailed how losing everything had forced him to confront his own nature. He'd started therapy, reconnected with his family, and begun the hard work of rebuilding his life from scratch. The email ended with a question that struck me deeply: when does someone's karma reset? When do they get a second chance? It was a question that challenged the very foundation of what I'd built. Karma Score was excellent at identifying patterns of betrayal, but could it recognize patterns of redemption? Should it? This led to our most controversial feature yet, the redemption protocol. We developed algorithms that could identify genuine patterns of changed behavior and assign appropriate weight to recent actions versus historical data. It wasn't about erasing the past, but about creating a path forward for those who genuinely wanted to change. The implementation was complex. We had to balance the system's ability to forgive with its responsibility to protect. We developed what we called trust rehabilitation patterns, specific behavioral markers that indicated genuine reform rather than manipulation. The redemption protocol became one of our most studied features. Psychologists used our data to research patterns of behavioral change. Business schools created case studies about the balance between accountability and forgiveness in professional relationships. Government agencies consulted with us about applying similar principles to rehabilitation programs. Brian's score began to improve more rapidly under the new system. Last month, he reached out again, this time with a proposal. He wanted to work with us to develop educational programs about business ethics and the importance of integrity. He offered to share his story as a cautionary tale for other entrepreneurs. I haven't responded yet. Part of me sees the potential value in his proposal. Who better to warn about the costs of betrayal than someone who lost everything because of it? Another part of me remembers those dark months after his betrayal, the pain and anger that drove me to build something better. But perhaps that's the final lesson in all of this. Trust isn't just about avoiding betrayal, it's about knowing when to give second chances. Karma Score can provide the data, but the decision to trust again remains fundamentally human. Yesterday, I received an alert from our system. Brian's Karma Score had crossed the threshold we'd set for high trust status. The algorithm had detected consistent patterns of honest behavior, genuine remorse, and positive impact on his community over the past year. The notification sat on my screen for a long time. Finally, I opened a new email and began to type. Dear Brian. I've been thinking about your proposal. Let's meet and discuss it. After all, who better to help build trust than someone who knows the true cost of losing it? But this time, we'll let KarmaScore monitor our collaboration. Deal? Adam. As I hit send, I realized something profound. The greatest revenge isn't just about getting even, or even about living better than your enemy. Sometimes, the greatest revenge is helping your enemy become someone who would never have betrayed you in the first place. My phone buzzed with his immediate response, deal. And Adam? Thank you for teaching me about karma. The hard way. I smiled and checked his karma score one more time. The trust rehabilitation pattern was holding steady. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. After all, in the end, karma isn't just about punishment, it's about balance. And sometimes, the universe has a way of bringing things full circle in ways we never expect. Just ask my karma score. It's still perfect. And now I know why, because true karma isn't just about getting even. It's about making things right. The story of KarmaScore's impact continues to evolve in ways I never imagined. Last week, I was invited to give a keynote speech at the World Economic Forum about the future of trust in the digital age. As I stood on that stage in Davos, looking out at world leaders and tech visionaries, I couldn't help but think about that kid in the school cafeteria trading chocolate milk for my mom's dumplings. Trust, I told the audience, is humanity's oldest technology. But like any technology, it needs to evolve with the times. The applications of our trust measuring algorithms have expanded far beyond their original scope. Governments are using modified versions of our system to detect corruption within their ranks. Dating apps are incorporating our trust metrics to create safer online dating environments. Schools are using specialized versions of KarmaScore to identify and prevent bullying before it escalates. But the most surprising application came from the environmental sector. Climate scientists approached us about using our trust pattern recognition system to verify corporate environmental claims. It turns out the same patterns that indicate personal trustworthiness also show up in organizational behavior. We can now predict with 89% accuracy when a company's green initiatives are genuine versus when they're just greenwashing. The system has become so integral to modern society that we had to grapple with serious ethical questions. Should someone be denied a job because of a low karma score? Should banks consider it when evaluating loan applications? Should it be admissible in court proceedings? To address these concerns, we established the KarmaScore Ethics Council, a diverse group of experts who help us navigate these complex decisions. We also created the KarmaScore Foundation, a non-profit organization that provides free access to our basic trust metrics for humanitarian organizations and developing nations. The foundation's first major project was in a small village in rural India, where local farmers were being exploited by dishonest middlemen. By implementing a simplified version of KarmaScore, the community was able to identify reliable trading partners and increase their average income by 47% in the first year. But perhaps the most meaningful impact has been on personal relationships. We've received countless letters from people who avoided toxic relationships or found genuine connections thanks to our system. One woman wrote to tell us that KarmaScore helped her recognize the signs of manipulation in an abusive relationship before it was too late. A man thanked us for helping him find honest business partners after losing his life savings to a scam. The technology has even influenced popular culture. There's a hit TV show called Karma Credits, based loosely on our story, though they made Brian much more villainous than he really was, and they gave me martial arts skills I definitely don't have. The phrase, check their karma score, has become common dating advice, right up there with, Google them and check their social media. Of course, success at this scale brings its own challenges. Competitors have emerged, offering quick fixes to improve trust scores. Black market services claim they can hack our system, they can't. We've had to develop increasingly sophisticated methods to detect and prevent gaming of our algorithms. But the biggest challenge came from an unexpected quarter: the philosophical implications of our technology. Religious leaders and ethicists began debating whether quantifying karma diminished its spiritual significance. Some argued that by making trust measurable, we were reducing something sacred to mere numbers. I struggled with these questions myself. Late one night, after a particularly intense debate with a Buddhist scholar, I found myself reading through old chat logs with Brian from our college days. In one conversation, we'd stayed up all night discussing whether you could quantify human nature. The irony wasn't lost on me. That's when I realized something crucial: Karma Score doesn't create trust or karma, it merely makes visible what was always there. Like a microscope revealing the hidden structures of cells, our system simply allows us to see the invisible patterns that govern human relationships. This understanding led to our latest innovation, the Trust Awareness Protocol. Rather than just calculating scores, we now focus on helping people understand the patterns in their own behavior. The system provides personalized insights about how their actions affect their relationships and suggests ways to build stronger, more authentic connections. Brian has become an unexpected ally in this new direction. His experience of losing and rebuilding trust has proven invaluable in developing these features. He now leads our Trust Recovery program, helping others learn from his mistakes. His presentations always begin with the same words: "I am the cautionary tale that helped build the world's most advanced trust system." Looking ahead, we're exploring new frontiers. We're developing algorithms that can predict societal trust trends, helping communities and organizations build stronger relationships. We're working on ways to measure and foster trust between different cultures and nations. We're even collaborating with AI researchers to ensure that as artificial intelligence evolves, it develops with built-in trust metrics. Yesterday, I received an interesting proposal from a major space exploration company. They want to use our trust metrics to help select and monitor crews for long-term space missions. The idea that our system, born from a personal betrayal in Pennsylvania, might someday help humans trust each other on Mars is mind-boggling. But perhaps that's the ultimate lesson in all of this. Trust, like karma, works in mysterious ways. What began as an act of revenge has evolved into something that helps people avoid the very pain that inspired it. Every time our system prevents a betrayal or helps someone rebuild broken trust, it feels like the universe is rebalancing itself. Brian and I had lunch last week. As we sat in the same cafe where we'd first planned Trust Score years ago, he asked me a question: "Do you ever regret exposing me?" I thought about it carefully before answering. "I regret that it was necessary," I said finally. "But I don't regret building something better from the ashes." He nodded, understanding. Then he pulled out his phone and showed me his latest karma score. It was nearly as high as mine. "Redemption," he said with a small smile, "is the ultimate revenge. You didn't just get even, you made me better." I couldn't help but smile back. Because in the end, that's what karma is really about. Not punishment, not revenge, but growth. Sometimes it takes losing everything to learn what really matters. Sometimes it takes betrayal to understand the true value of trust. And sometimes, just sometimes, the best way to right a wrong is to create something that makes that wrong less likely to happen to anyone else. As I write this, Karma Score's algorithms are quietly running on servers around the world, measuring and monitoring the ebb and flow of human trust. Every second, they process millions of interactions, identifying patterns of both betrayal and loyalty, helping people make better choices about who to trust and how to be more trustworthy. And somewhere in that vast sea of data, there's still a record of that first betrayal, the catalyst that started it all. But now it's just one data point among millions, helping to prevent countless other betrayals and nurture countless authentic connections. That's the thing about karma, it has a way of transforming even our darkest moments into something meaningful. And if you don't believe me, well, just check my karma score.